Do fee-for-service dentists have to go to the DMV by themselves? I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Todd Fleischman. This is Paul, Dr. Nacho Goodman. I went to the DMV this morning, got there early. They did a great job, by the way. But as I was walking, I'm thinking, do fee-for-service dentists have to go by themselves, or do they have someone to go for them? Do they have people for that? Welcome, Dr. Todd Fleischman. Do you go to the DMV by yourself?
I do. In fact, I went recently.
So that's not a feature of being a fee-for-service dentist. You can't get out of going to the
There's no
DMV.
one who does that work for you, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, we're going to chat today. Todd is going to be one of our amazing speakers at the Patient-Centered Care and Profitability Conference at Dental Nachos. If you'd like to learn more about that, to watch either online or be there in person, just text the word TALK to 215-798-9897. But Todd, orient our listeners. You've been on so many times, but just tell us a little bit about, we're here together in Center City, Philadelphia. We just had lunch from Chipotle, super on brand, right?
Yeah.
Super on brand. I had to pay too, and I'm the out-of-network dentist, but that's okay. So, see, fee-for-service dentist, always getting stuff for free. Now, tell us a little bit about your practice style, a little bit about your journey here. Take a couple minutes to do that.
Thanks, Paul. Actually, yesterday, it's great to be here. Great to be back with the Nachos crew. Yesterday, we celebrated our 12-year anniversary of me being practice owner. My journey is one that I've spoken about quite a bit. I was fortunate enough to develop relationships and build bridges, and long story short, I bought my fee-for-service practice in September of 2010 from my predecessor. And then over the past 12 years, we've organically grown over time just through type of work we do and how we do it, and all those little tips and tricks that hopefully we'll be able to explain to people along the way. But right now I'm working 4 days a week here downtown. I have 2 associates. Each of them come 1 day a week. I have 4 hygienists who alternate throughout the week. Some days we have 2 working, some days we have 3. Some days we have 1 doctor, some days we have 2. At the end of the day, it's not dissimilar from what a lot of people are already doing. I think we're just focusing on the details, which is what makes it really
We're going to dig into some of these details. I'm going to ask some questions, a couple of things along the way. Let's say I'm a patient in your office, okay? I'm a patient in your office. I just want to break these things down in simplified ways. We went to Chipotle. It was crazy. When I got up, they just, to the front of the line, they just asked me to pay for it, right? I didn't ask, they couldn't pay. I couldn't bill me later.
Nope.
There was no
PPO.
PPO. So is it similar in your practice? Talk to us about an existing patient, they need a crown. These aren't Todd's real fees, don't freak out. Let's just say, I'm a patient, I'm gonna benefit from a crown, hard hat from your tooth, great talking point, that's Todd's, okay? It's $1,500.
Yeah.
Run me through the patient paying for that.
Well, first and foremost, they're aware of what the fees are.
Okay.
Right? So there's no, my biggest concern always is the surprise of the fee, or the surprise of the treatment, or how it's going to go. So first and foremost, setting expectations, right? And I don't care if it comes with the treatment or it comes with payment. My team has already primed our new patients on how the practice works, understanding that most people are calling asking if we accept their benefits, right? And so that prompts my team to have the correct verbal skills to go through, sort of.
How do they navigate the "do you accept my benefits" question? How are they navigating that?
Yeah, we try not to be too surreptitious about it. We just are very candid with patients that we don't actively participate with their dental insurance. We then follow it up by telling them we were happy to submit their insurance benefits for them, because really we're trying to change the verbiage also. We don't like to use insurance in the office. We prefer to use benefit because it isn't truly insurance. And so, I don't know where really.
Well, basically, I use the word coupon a lot in my practice, or benefit, a coupon that acts like a benefit with restrictions. But if I have this $1,500 crown, patients are, maybe the right word is expected, trained, asked, they pay before they get the crown. If they utilize insurance, like a rebate, they may get $200 later. They may get $400 later, but that has no impact on your actual fee.
No, that has no impact on our fee. And we, over time, have just become confident in our ability to educate patients that we'd like to think we're providing a different layer of value. I don't want to say level of value, but a different layer of value by not participating. It allows us to not have to think about the kind of dentistry we're doing. We can just do the best care we can possibly plan for a patient. And once we spend the time to educate them about that, about our style, oftentimes they're on board. At the end of the day, if someone's going to be hung up on money, we're not going to be the best fit for them, probably.
I mean, we're both fans. You've taken all this continued with Dr. John Coyce, and the book Raving Fans talks about not everyone has to be the right fit for you.
Correct.
And it can be done in a way that's caring. It can be done in a way that's genuine.
Yeah.
And we have great friends. I mean, do you refuse to hang around with dentists who accept insurance, or do you have some friends that accept insurance?
Of course not. I mean, listen, the reality of it is this. I got grandfathered into this really extraordinary scenario. I was educated in fee-for-service sort of lifestyle prior. My father is a retired periodontist who ran a small fee-for-service practice right where I'm from. So I was educated on the style of dentistry and the style of sort of compensation I wanted. I didn't expect it to have it at 32 when I bought my practice, but it just happened to be the opportunity that was afforded to me. That being said, my goals would have been over time to move the practice in that direction because it allows me to work with as much freedom as possible. And that
allows you to work with as much freedom as possible.
The whole point yeah, that's just off the top of my head, but honestly, it does feel right saying it. The whole reason I became a dentist, quite bluntly, was to own my own business. And if you're going to own your own business, part of that I think is making your own decisions. Yeah. And I tell patients this quite candidly. I don't want insurance companies delegating to me how I treat them.
I like that. I reframe that. I mean, I was at the dog park and I spent a lot of time there now. And there was a woman there who said, my dentist dropped my insurance after 25 years. You know, it was spoiled block PPO, you probably know the one I said to her. And sometimes I can just be like, oh, that kind of stinks, but I like to stand in for dentistry. It's 6:30 a.m. And I said this, I said, would you work for someone who paid you less each year? And I paused and she said, no. And I said, that's what these companies are doing to dentists. And it's really difficult for dentists to figure this out. And what I share is we do not want your dental insurance to have a seat at the table when making the best decisions about your teeth. If you want to use it as a coupon, great. Some people don't have it. So now let's talk about this for a second, Todd. People sometimes, I don't know if you've heard this on social media, they only share the good parts, right? They only share the successes.
100%.
Everything's great. They're on a beach 364 days a year with
Yeah.
not even a 6-pack or an 8-pack. They got a Jeff Goodman 10-pack, right? So tell us about what are the biggest challenges and stresses of being a fee-for-service dentist? When you go in, what are some things that you really like? This is pretty stressful. Or I got to pay attention to this. Or I got to make sure my team does this right. And while you're thinking about it, one stressful part of being a network is the write-offs, not getting paid, having to submit to insurance. But now let's go put the lens on fee-for-service. What are some of the challenges?
Well, I think I always talk to patients about providing value. They hear big numbers and they know they can get it less expensive somewhere else. So why come to us? Well, a couple reasons, right? One is the service that we provide. It's going to always be service forward. I mean, in a fee-for-service practice, you have to provide high-level service. I remind my team of that on a daily basis. That's customer service, that's technical service. It's whatever iteration of service you think that you can manage. So first and foremost, you have to provide high level of customer service. That means your team has to be kind, they have to be genteel, they have to be appropriate, they have to understand verbiage and when the right things to say and when to say them. That requires a ton of training, that requires a ton of investment. On top of all that, and being in a customer service role on every position in the practice, clinically you have to be extraordinarily competent because to maintain fee-for-service, I would argue, long-term, based on a reputation, you have to back it up with clinical skills, and that you have to invest in yourself as a dentist, especially as a younger dentist who wants to contemplate big changes. You know, do you have the skill set behind you to then do the dentistry that's required in a fee-for-service atmosphere? Because you typically are going to be over time less insurance-driven patients, right? They're still going to want their benefit, but they'll be less insurance-driven. And if that's the case, can you do the dentistry that's required?
So what I'll point out here is the bowls that we have with Chipotle are good, but you can't serve that level of clinical Chipotle if you want to charge, let's say, Alves or higher prices. So now tell us, if someone's listening saying, I want to be, the title of this, I want to be more fee-for-service, right? Maybe you're not going to be totally fee-for-service, but I'll move in this direction. You can text FFS to 215-798-9897 to get a free resource from us. But talk about the clinical investment, and it could be time and money and courses that you've taken. What is, if someone was listening saying, I want to be like Dr. Todd, tell them about the clinical investment. Where can they go? What are they going to invest and what have you done?
First of all, I want to just preface the conversation by saying anyone can do it. It's an attitude change. It takes a lot of effort. You can't just come in and see a hole and fill it. You need to develop relationships. That's a wildly important detail. That being said, if you were on a curriculum and you left dental school and you didn't do a residency, or maybe even you did do a 1 or even 2-year residency, let's not say specialty, let's say AGD or GPR, I would recommend going through certain course curriculums. I mean, at this point, anyone who's heard me or seen me speak, I do enough stumping for.
Well, let's break these down, because that's
nice.
Tell me about your experience. I just talked with Dr. Gary Wood on the phone. He's going to be interviewed soon. Look forward to that. Spear, tell us about the experience you did. When did you start it? You went through all the levels, and what are some of the things you gained from it?
So I bought my practice in 2010, which means I probably started Spear in 2009. I graduated in 2004, so I'm already 4 or 5 years out by the time I started to recognize Spear. And that was because my predecessor, Bob Kravitz, who I bought the practice from, was a Spear guy. So I started basic. You go out, you do a seminar, you get excited about the resources they can provide for you, about the facility, about being in Scottsdale, coming from the Northeast. And then you go back and you go through the curriculum, because it's the only way you're going to really learn something and how to utilize it is by doing it consistently and repetitively. And so that's what Spear really does for you, is they bring to you the same concepts, the same approaches, the same ideas, all the same way all the time.
Consistency is a big part.
You have systems, right? There's systems, and that's what, how it reaches out into fee-for-service is that when you want to start doing bigger cases, when you need to be able to speak to patients about doing more complicated or aesthetic care dentistry, you have to have a system to approach patients with, and Spear certainly helps you develop that path. Besides the book learning, their restorative design workshops and occlusion workshops are really great starting points for people who are learning how to get their hands underneath them, and how to cut teeth and provide the right restorative platform for the results that we're looking to get, especially in a fee-for-service office.
And I love this. And you have this quote of saying, the more Paul Goodman kindly annoys you, the less annoyed you're going to be, but I'm here to be real. And it's about the investment. So, Greg Vernick is a top chef in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
If 2 people go out to eat at his restaurant, what do you think it's going to cost them roughly?
About $400.
$400, right? So if you want to eat at that restaurant,
Depends on how many
if you're a young dentist or a new practice owner, you have to realize that these investments that you make up front pay off long term. So if you go to
incredible
Spear,
dividends.
what were you paying yearly to go to Spear?
Oh, I would invest almost $10,000.
$10,000 a year.
And now I still spend more than 10 to go to Kois, and that doesn't include flights, hotels.
So you're reinvesting in yourself, because one of the things that I think is important to share, even if it's uncomfortable, is that you can't just be fee for service or deliver better care or deliver better experience without investing in yourself and your team.
I also think what's important for fee for service, in my opinion, is, again, going back to relationships, is that I tell patients the reason you come to me for whatever premium that may be, which by the way is not this extraordinary premium, is that I am connected in my community also. I'm a conduit for your care. You have access to fee for service, which means in theory you should have access to people who practice at a high level, who are confident enough in their skill set and their personalities and their relationships with their specialists to be able to manage practices like that and get the results that you're looking for. That's a service for patients. People ask, well, why don't you take insurance and why don't you provide the same benefit? Because I feel as though I'm trained at a higher level at this point, and that I feel that I can offer patients a different experience than if they went to the Chipotle.
I want to say this.
Which is delicious, and we ate it all day,
So,
and I would eat it every day.
Less judgment, more curiosity. That's Ted Lasso. But like I said, Alves, Chipotle, there's no judgment. They're just different models, right? Different models. Let's stay with clinical for a second, because I think this is important, and I think this is really hard for dentists to understand. You don't do every procedure. You don't do endo. You don't extract broken down teeth.
You haven't taken 2,000 years.
I'm not saying this is a requirement to be fee for service, but you've honed in on, you got to be really good at what you do.
No, you don't. I'm not asking people to be jacks of all trades.
But what do you do clinically? What is your clinical strengths that you offer in your practice?
Well, I think just comprehensive restorative design and functionality at this point.
So you're
I'm
partnering with an endodontist. You're partnering with an endodontist.
I have endodontic relationships outside my office. I have incredible periodontal relationships outside my office. I have incredible oral surgery relationships outside my office.
And one of my favorites, and I know there's a lot of good choices, so it's very hard for us, for Mary to pick, but you refer to some amazing orthodontists.
Incredible orthodontist relationships.
I actually just think this is fun to talk about a minute, and even something I can learn from. How does orthodontics figure into your treatment planning? Is it more than when you were younger? Do you see it in a different way?
I mean, what you realize, and anyone who's done comprehensive book learning or CE will tell you that anytime you see these big cases, there's almost always orthodontics involved, right? When you're dealing with comprehensive occlusal stuff, aesthetics, and combinations thereof, again, unless you're cutting all the teeth, typically there's orthodontics involved. And again, the places you send your patients is a reflection upon you also, right? The relationships that you build with your specialists for your patient's care is a reflection upon you also. So it's not uncommon that if you run fee-for-service, you're typically in cahoots with other fee-for-service practitioners.
You patients, I mean, I'll never forget this as a young dentist. It brings me back, flashback. A patient came and screamed at my front desk that I referred them to this periodontist that was way too expensive for them. And I had no idea what the periodontist charged. But it was a light bulb moment for me that the patient thought I had a much different relationship with that periodontist. I was like a new dentist. I'm just like, you have bone loss, see periodontist, right? And I referred to the guy my dad referred to, who was a good periodontist. But it was really like, I was like, oh man, this patient thinks I know exactly what they charge. The patient thinks I know what they're their office. So it's key that you work with specialists that are accountable for a similar experience.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be accountable because they are expensive, and bluntly, I warn patients about that ahead of time. But I also stump for my specialists quite a bit. I stump for everybody. If I'm going to send my patient somewhere else, I want my patient to be reassured that if you're going to spend extraordinary money out of pocket, that certainly could be less expensive other places. The reason I'm sending you to A instead of B is because you are absolutely going to get a more predictable, more advantageous, better result, not only for yourself, but then for me too, to then do the next level of care that is required by me, right? It's not just implants being placed or teeth being moved around and fingers crossed that it all works out for me. If I'm not set up for success, now my fee-for-service reputation on the back end, all the pretty stuff, all the functional stuff, all the chewing stuff gets tainted because it wasn't set up correctly by the right person.
You should say we streamline the hassle factor for you, because that's what you do.
Well, I'm a conduit for their care.
You streamline the hassle factor. Let's stay for one more minute on the clinical investment you made. Tell us about your experience at the COIS. And, I love
the COIS Center is a very
so that's what you did
place.
after SPEAR.
Yeah, so I did the full SPEAR curriculum, the whole, even some auxiliary cases. I mean, it's got to be 9 or 10 courses over probably 6 or 7 years, probably. Before the kids were really, the throes of it, I was going out twice a year, and then once I had the little ones and was busier at the practice, it was once a year. But it was something that I scheduled specifically, and now I did that with COIS also. Once I finished SPEAR, I wanted another level. I always recommend people do SPEAR first because COIS is such an inundation of information that you really need to have some background. Plus, it helps to have a bunch of cases under your belt before you go there. Otherwise, you're really not going to understand sort of how things fit in with each other.
And I think you could just stop for a second and say, it's really about the right seat at the right time.
I would agree.
You graduate from your GPR and you just go fly out to COIS, you go back to your PPO office, it's really going to be a struggle.
It's not that you're not going to get something from it. Of course, you're always going to get information, but your ability to apply it and use it immediately helps when you're in charge of your own destiny a little bit. And I would recommend that to young practitioners who don't own their own practices yet, who haven't invested in cameras or facilities or things, SPEAR is a better starting point because it's a little bit more of a basic introduction.
So you did SPEAR then COIS.
Yeah.
And these are things that
I'm almost done with COIS. I mean, it's been 5 years, 6 years out of COIS now, once a year, and I'm graduating. The graduation class, the second treatment planning curriculum is in March, which is exciting. Yeah.
Now,
and by the way, I'm 44 and practicing 18 years, and I'm first still doing.
So it's a journey. The whole thing is a journey.
It's a marathon, right? It's not a short play.
But this is me highlighting it, since I get 97 DMs a day, is that you can't just be better without investing in being better. It's impossible.
Listen, everything costs money. The reality is, and what young practitioners don't understand, and it's not to their fault, they just haven't had enough experience yet, is that it really is true what they say. You do have to invest in yourself. You never understand how to do higher level care in a predictable way unless you educate yourself. Can you do a lot of education on your own with mentors at high levels? Sure, I think you could if you were in the right place at the right time, but I think there's more predictability to letting someone else teach you.
And they've also
outside your immediate.
They have proven
comfort
systems
zone.
on building dentists.
Correct. Everything's evidence-based, by the way, at Kois, which is the biggest takeaway, right? This is not like him guessing about what works, right? Everything is backed by a study, and that's really critical.
We talk about ROI, and really it's relationships, opportunity, and impact. Meeting Todd's been one of the best things that's happened in my life. I'm glad he reached out to me a few years ago. He was like, do you like beer? I like beer. Let's have a beer. That really.
I think it's important that people just recognize that I reached out to you for
I know, right? I think that's awesome. But tell us, you've been part of the Nacho lecture circus, because you just came and you said you wanted to lecture, right? You're like, oh, I want to lecture.
Not right. Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I wanted to know what you were doing because I was interested. You were in the city that I owned my practice in, and you're making grumblings about town. No, I didn't want to lecture with you.
But when you said you didn't want to lecture, I was just like, no big. Just like when a patient doesn't want a crown, I was like, no big deal. We don't need to.
Well, you disregarded me, and then you told me that I was lecturing for you.
Yeah,
so that was pretty much how it went.
But I put it in a safe space for you, and
Yes.
Todd's added so much value to you. But you've gone to these places, and some people have said to you, hey, you're Todd from Nacho on Advanced CE.
Yeah.
But talk about just, dentists are people too. And,
Yes.
you went from being newly married, then having kids. How much just the relationships you built going to Spear and Kois as just an outside the clinical part?
Some of my best friends now are these relationships. I mean, I can think about them as we're talking about it. It's nice that you mention it because I really care about a lot of the people that I've met at these places. We're all going through these things together. What's cool about Kois, very typically, is that you go into this room and everyone just opens up their laptops. And everyone's just showing each other their cases and these are advanced clinicians. And when you hang around advanced clinicians, it rubs off on you, right? You start to get that bug where you're like, wait a second, I want to do that. I want to show pictures that look like this. I want to educate patients about doing this kind of care because maybe it'll make what I'm doing a little bit more exciting, right?
It's like going out to dinner with Jeff Goodman. Like, I want to dress like that. I mean, where do you find those pants?
Well,
those ankles seem so constricted.
And then you realize how hard it takes to get to look like Jeff Goodman, and you got to put the time in. And that is exactly the analogy for dentistry too. You don't get to have results like Appa, Adamo, whoever else are famous on Instagram without putting the time in. These are 10,000 hour guys, right? These are not 1,000 hour.
And one of the things I hope you can bring to life about people about me is, as much as I'm become this Facebook guy, I love things face to face, and you got to get out face to face with dentists.
Well, I mean, you know me. Nothing's more important to me than relationships, and to build a relationship through a screen, while feasible, it never will feel the same as when we're in person. I think all of us, having gone through COVID now, having done 2 years of CE online, having lectured with you and for you on camera, to be in person it's just so much more extraordinary.
Younger dentists just have this benefit. I mean, just talk about this. What's the benefit of them watching an Artie Volker lecture on Nacho on Demand CE? To be able to just turn on their phone and listen to Artie.
I mean, first of all, Artie, he's so generous with his knowledge as is of what he shares and all his tips and tricks. But I mean, I joke that with my newest assistant, who's a young woman, expanded function, who needs to be doing composite work and things. There's so much access to information, but where are you getting it from and how is it being taught to you, right? When you go online with something like Nachos and you can get CE in an hour and a minute on a click and learn from Artie when you're feeling sort of froggy about, I don't feel like my skills are ready for this case I have Monday. It's a great opportunity to go online, find something that works for you out of the catalog, and give yourself a primer on how to be prepared for the next day.
And they're lucky to have that because we had none of that. And we
had
did not.
None of it. You either watched a fourth year student do a class 4, or you didn't know how to do a class 4.
So that's just to pay attention to that. I won't keep it too much longer time, but I want to wrap up with this kind of topic. I had you walk through clinical, but I think that dentists get lopsided. I talk about your dental core, your mind skills, your word skills, your hand skills. They spend thousands of dollars on implant placement. They fly to another country, right? Yeah. They even go to Kois. But talk to me, how do you get your team? This is what you'll be talking about at the Patient-Centered Care and Profitability Conference. If you would like to be part of this online or in person, just text TALK to 215-798-9897. But I'm asking you to present at this conference using your clinical care as the backdrop.
Yeah.
and sharing how do you get your team to help you deliver this amazing care?
Yeah, first of all, it's a philosophy, right? And so people have to be bought into that philosophy. So as an owner who's also there on a daily basis doing wet finger dentistry, you need to be a leader, which again, 12 years into ownership, 18 years into private practice, I think I know I'm a much better leader now than I was when I first bought my practice and literally was scared to walk into my own office, right? So you need to be a leader. It takes a lot of effort. You have to expose your team to all the things that you in turn are learning, right? And that means either coming back from CE, sitting down at a meeting.
How do you do this? Tell me something, because this costs money and time too, but it's worth it, right?
Yes.
So let's just go, do you have meetings after your courses where you pay your team to be there and you go over what you learned?
100%. So first of all, again, fee for service, there's a couple of like basic tenets, right? I would imagine in every fee for service, they have at least a monthly meeting of several hours. In every fee for service, they probably have a morning huddle, right? In every fee for service, they go to see and they come back and they review it together.
And why is that not a waste of time and money to have your team sit around for 3 hours and pay 10 team members
First of all,
their hourly rate?
it's multifactorial. It's on multiple levels. Level one is humanity. People that you pay who are working for you they want to know that you care about them.
Right.
Okay. I can't imagine going to work even if it's 32 hours a week and not caring about the people I'm around.
Yeah.
That would be just crummy. And I'll tell you quite candidly that for many years early on, I worked with people who I didn't enjoy being around, and it made me miserable. And then when I finally got the gumption to get rid of the low-hanging fruit, my life was.
Now I want to stop you because I talked with Dr. Amanda C. and she talked a little bit about this experience. I hopefully we'll have time to share how you just thought of getting an associate on your own. That was a good one. No, he didn't. I kind of know that. But she said somewhere, what was that? We have the ahas here. Like, what was that aha moment? So you were doing that. Did you get a coach? Did you get a consultant? Who showed you this light? You're like, Todd, you don't have any. That's going to be someone you paid. You said, you don't
I think it was probably my office manager who I trust, who I have an incredible relationship with. And she was like, I would never tell you how to run your business, but this cannot continue any longer. Yeah. Sometimes people draw lines and draw lines in the sand too, and it forces you to like grow up a little bit. And there were definitely moments in the first 5 or 6 years of me owning the practice where it was like a put up or shut up situation. Yeah. And I knew these people were correct because I'm smart enough to just understand that things weren't right, but I didn't have the stones, quite honestly, to make the big changes.
And I think, I'm not.
You gotta have the stones.
You have to be willing. People go, I love feedback. I go, do you love feedback or just good feedback? Because if you just love good feedback, you're not going to grow. You have to be able to, feedback has to be given to you in a caring way, but it's going to be uncomfortable sometimes. And it sounds like in that moment, people were making you aware of something that you just weren't aware of yourself.
Well, there's some of that. There's also having me been an early practice owner and not being in control of my office enough. Yeah. Not getting ahead of scenarios when things were starting to spiral or things were like getting off between team members or whatever it may have been, or dynamics. Nipping that stuff in the bud is something that I'm much better at doing now than I was 10 years ago.
So you have these meetings with your team. I've also seen you on your awesome Instagram account. You pay consultants to come in. I just had you do something at Nacho headquarters at your place, because sometimes, tell me about, this is I think important. Things don't have to be going terrible to want them to be better, right?
No, in fact, you don't want to plan for things
to be terrible. So you
terrible.
said, I want to just do something to do a reset or a reframe or a recenter for my team. And you said, I'm going to bring someone in.
Well, listen, I think we all get very honest with each other when the practice becomes a little bit stagnant. Right? Where like you just recognize that your numbers aren't changing anymore. You're not doing anything different. You might think you're doing things differently, but the bottom line doesn't show it. And we run our practice by the numbers. We know our daily goals, our monthly goals, our yearly goals, our expectations, our bonus system, our overhead. We are very much in tune with all that in practice. And so you need to know those numbers to understand.
Who taught you those numbers?
Well, I will say Kravitz. I mean, my predecessor had an MBA. He worked with the Pride Institute.
Where would you go now to learn those numbers?
Probably to Paragon, which is, bluntly, which is where they're based out of the Midwest in Ohio. They're a management consulting firm in dentistry. I find them to be the most sort of like vanilla of consultants, where they don't push you hard. They're very Midwest in their values, which I love. And I think they're being kind and honest.
So when you brought this person recently and you did this, what kind of impact has that had on your team? Just a reset or reframe?
Well, first of all, the team also recognizes that I'm investing in them.
Yeah.
They know these things cost money. I share it with them. Yeah. By the way, if you don't tell your team what things cost, they never value it. Right? So like we talk about the numbers in our practice. We talk about production in our practice. We talk about bonus systems in our practice. And so they know when I'm investing in the practice. They know when I'm buying a $75,000 cone beam,
Yeah.
you know, a $10,000 sensor that was broken because it's being manhandled too aggressively, right? So whatever it is, whether it's physical dentistry stuff or management stuff, we're sharing the investment value with them too. That being said, you have to surround yourself with the right team who's going to listen to those consultants, right? Because you can have team members who sit there and roll their eyes and act like cancers among the rest of the team members. And those are the ones that, you know, consultants are great to bring in because not only will they teach you things, but they'll also tell you which employees to get rid of.
I mean, they're just like the constructors, like a Lincoln Harris, like that prep's not good. You're like, but I think it's good. Like, not good.
It's not good.
But it's good. It's not good.
Not good.
And that's with people. Now, the third piece is I've also seen you I've brought teams to hands-on courses, to philosophy courses. You've actually taken your team with you, whether it's on planes, trains, or automobiles. What's the value in bringing your teams to the right places like that to sit with you, literally side by side, like you did at the Smithson course?
Again, dentists need to also remember that oftentimes our team members aren't as exposed to the world as we are, right? And so you have an opportunity as a leader, as an owner, as an employer to take your team and do things with them, to expose them to the world a little bit more, which I think is really incredibly valuable because it makes them better people. Forget about employees first, right? It makes them better people to gather them all together, be organized in an airport, get on a plane together, treat them to every meal, every cab, every drink, every chaise lounge, right? Because they don't often get these kind of things. And we, first and foremost, provide an opportunity to our teams, which by the way, builds such incredible trust equity with them that now when you expose them to the philosophy of care that you want, they are 100% on board because they understand it's within the umbrella of everything else that you.
And I think that we share as dentists, people did that a lot for us when we were dental students, give us free stuff like I do.
Right.
People brought us to study clubs and said, here, eat this fancy meal and don't pay for it. And I just think that engenders gratitude, and you do that for someone else someday. And it's just, I think that's so great.
I think you need to, like I teach my kids as much as we can, and I understand that I'm fortunate and can say this kind of thing, but you lead with generosity.
Yeah.
Right? Whenever you're making a decision, whenever you're on the fence about something, lead with generosity, right?
I love that.
And I've learned that, and I'll tell you that Kravitz, Bob Kravitz, when I bought the practice, he told me not to be cheap.
Yeah.
And he had a fee-for-service practice, and he knew that to manage a fee-for-service team and a practice, you cannot, under any circumstances, in my opinion, be cheap.
And as we sit here on a Friday after Chipotle, you've basically treatment planned the life that you've wanted with guidance like that.
It just takes time. Everything's happening. Everything's moving in the right direction. Have I made some salient choices along the way that have helped me? Have I gotten advice from people who I trust and love along the way? Absolutely. Have I made mistakes and gone backwards before going forwards? Of course.
Well, I want to talk about this one thing for a second. We're going to talk about the course at the end, but this is a good point. We didn't have the same relationship we have now. And I saw you and how awesome you were, but also how much you did. And I said, you need an associate. You said, I don't need an associate. I'm like, you need an associate.
I didn't want an associate.
You don't want an associate. So actually, but there's people like you out there that are going to help. What was your reluctance? We'll tell the happy ending, but you're sitting there with Paul Goodman. If Paul Goodman's annoying me, I don't want to hear what he has to say.
No, like dentists are very typically their own people, right? You don't go to dental school to maybe now people do because they're smarter, but when we went to dental school, when our parents' generation went to dental school, they went to come out being a solo practitioner. They were on their own little business and do their own little thing. Most dentists don't like to be told what to do. Most of them are obsessive compulsive, right? You don't go into what we do unless you're sort of detail oriented typically, especially if you want to do it at a high level, right? So as soon as you think about an associate, you give up control. And control is what's everything for most people. That's why most patients are nervous in the chair, why the anxieties bubble up, because what's more vulnerable than lying down with your mouth open and your eyes closed most of the time? You don't know what's coming or what's happening.
So you weren't sure if you wanted to.
So I felt like the patient.
Yeah. So, but what did I do to get you to test it out?
Well, you reassured me that for continued growth, for continued lifestyle choices that you knew I wanted to make because you and I are friends and we talk about it, none of those things could ever happen without an associate. And so it was almost was like a line in the sand thing where it was like, hey, if you want X and Y to happen, then A and B have to happen first, right?
So I want to break this down.
But I'm just, to my credit, I'm smart enough to recognize after being kindly annoyed for a significant amount of time, when I was ready, and you put the system.
You got to do the push-ups. It's a Gary Vee thing. I can tell people to do the push-ups. I can do push-ups. You do the push-ups and get all the credit for doing the push-ups. I want to share that I take zero credit for people doing the push-ups of their life that help them. I will take credit for kindly annoying them to do push-ups. But this is so we at Nachos are testing out this 4-day week work schedule. And I do this thing with my team and I say, I want everyone to rate it out of 10. And they say, it's 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. So I went around the room. I said, what did you rate the 4-day week work schedule? And some people said 12 out of 10, 11 out of 10. What do you rate the experience of having an associate?
Yeah, I mean, it's an infinity out of 10. I mean, we've talked about this because you love to gloat about it, but the reality of it is I would never go back to not having
That's the point I was saying, because what I've shared is, it wasn't about making more money or less money. What was it about for you?
Well, I'm not making more money.
Right.
Not yet, but that's the point.
Why? Watch this. You're not making more money, but you're happier. Why with the associate?
Well, first of all, I'm working less.
Working less.
I have more time to get my work done at the office during the week, so now my Friday open days are really open now. It's afforded me an opportunity to start thinking about the next step for me, which would be teaching.
Yeah.
And so to have another day off to teach by the time I'm 50, which is in 6 years, the only way I can do that is by continuing to develop my associates. Now, again, in a fee-for-service practice, it's challenging because patients are typically used to seeing that guy who's built this practice. So it's a retraining moment. But the reality is, again, I don't mean to keep saying the same things, but when you've built enough of a strong relationship with your patients where at that point it becomes the umbrella of the practice, right? It doesn't have to be me anymore. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be outliers on everything. There are going to be some patients who only want to see Paul Goodman, who only want to see Todd Fleischman, right? But for all of those, there are just as many, if not more, who don't care.
I would say figure out how to deal with the few. Whereas I say to people sometimes, I know both of us have humor. I say, Millie, I don't want to deprive other dentists of the joy of working with your mouth. And they get it and they laugh. And then I always say to them, if you have any problems with anyone here at any time, it's my personal cell phone number, I want you to call or text me. They never do it. And then they wind up liking the associate just as much as me. And now
it was the same way with me. When I bought my practice, I had only been working there 18 months. I had only been working there 2 days a week. So I only met maybe conservatively 50% of the practice when I bought it. Now, when you buy a practice, most of the value is in the goodwill. It's the patients, right? So my biggest concern was, I'm going to buy this practice, fee for service. I'm going to be 32. I'm going to look like I'm 26. And I'm going to go there from a 60-year-old who was buying it at the peak of his career, who was running it. And I'm going to hope people don't leave. But the funny thing about dentistry is people don't want to go to a new dentist.
Oh,
right? So as long as you go in and you stay humble and you stay kind and you take your time building relationships and you're not in a rush to start transitioning their whole mouths from amalgams to composites or from composite veneers to porcelain, and you're paceful in your approach and you understand the psychology of what patients are going through change, because change is extraordinarily difficult, then you will be okay. I feel like if you just give yourself some time and be patient, anyone can do fee for service. You just need to manage your overhead. You need to surround yourself with people who are going to share the same values with you, and you got to be patient in your approach.
What you say is right, but it's really raising your communication game just as much as your clinical game.
Listen, as you can tell from us speaking, you need to be able to talk a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, we're exhausted throughout the day because we spend more time setting expectations, giving explanations, providing value, educating. It's exhausting.
And I'm going to do a lightning round before we wrap up. But Todd is going to be speaking at the Increased Patient-Centered Care and Profitability Conference. Dr. Todd Fleischman, Dr. Travis Campbell, and myself are going to be talking about how to be more fee-for-service, how to be less annoyed with dental insurance, how to talk about money, how to talk about membership plans. You can come in person or watch online. Just text the word TALK to 215-798-9897. But this lightning round is this. Todd, how many days a year do you work?
Now in 168.
168 days a year. So it's not a contest. I got a 4-year-old right now. I got an 8-year-old, and my 8-year-old picks at her. And
that's clinical days.
Yeah. Clinical days, yeah. And she says, it's not a contest, so it's not a contest, but 168 clinical days per year. What are your hours of clinical care on the days that you work?
8:15 to 5.
8:15 to 5, gotcha.
4 days a week.
What are the outside the operatory systems, because we meet on Fridays, and I probably ruined this Friday for you already, but that's okay. But what do you do on Fridays? Just providing context to be able to run this business. You can't do all of it during patient hours. What do you do on Fridays?
So typically Fridays are my paperwork days, in the sense that, like, not my daily clinical notes, but any new patient so there's a bunch of things we're going to talk about at the conference. One of them is the new patient experience, which is really wild in developing fee-for-service. Because at the end of the day, if you're gonna be fee-for-service and not be insurance-driven, then you need to provide services that are not insurance-based, right? So that's typically comprehensive care, because anytime you go over $1,000 or $2,000, forget about the insurance conversation. There's no more insurance conversation, right? Because it's not insurance, it's a benefit, right? It's a coupon. So after $1,000 or $2,000, there's no reason you should be talking about benefits with patients anyway, right?
For sure.
So the reality of it is, if you're doing dentistry that costs more than $1,000 or $2,000, which by the way is 2 crowns, you know, or whatever, then anytime you're going over 2 crowns, then you're not insurance driven anyway. Well, that's comprehensive care. So do care that affords you the ability to not do insurance driven care, right? So.
And then you don't have to do what I said this years ago to the residents, Todd. It's not like I'm some prophet, but they remember this. The future of dentistry is more work on fewer patients, because it's more work, comprehensive things on fewer people. People our age and younger are not going to walk in with 15 class 5s to do. So it's figuring out how to treatment plan people to fix their smile.
I think now the key is health and wellness. I mean, I talk to patients, they come in, their mouths are bleeding. If they're bleeding from their mouth. If you told anyone you're bleeding from your mouth, they would be running to fix it immediately, right? So what is with this 2 cleanings a year thing? And I've never, that has always been such a point of contention with me, developed by insurance companies. We're just gonna pick twice a year. Not based in any science, not based in any theory. It's just them wanting to give a benefit twice a year. As soon as you tell patients that, and you say to them, I think that you're gonna look healthier with an extra clean, you know how you make your practice fee for service? Just start by pitching patients 1 extra cleaning a year. Just get them used to paying 1 thing out of pocket and then recognizing how much better they feel from that 1 extra service, right? That's providing value. As soon as they start showing up and their mouths are healthier, which they are going to be, because your team's on board and you're on board, then they're gonna not care about giving you money out of pocket because they found value in what you provided, right? So you just, that's really the key for me, is value.
My last thing, because it's my network, I can do whatever I want, is this is going to be a list of people that you wouldn't have known if you didn't know me, and what you admire about them or like about them as a person or a dentist, right? So these are a list of people that you might like better than me that you wouldn't have known if I didn't exist.
I mean, I feel like there's obvious answers.
So hold on, we're going to do a bunch.
Okay.
Dr. Joe Latinelli.
I would not know him without you, and yes, he's a great guy.
And how often do you guys communicate?
We're weekly, I mean, of course. Well, we're on text chain.
And he is a fellow fee-for-service dentist in New York.
He is. Fabulous.
From the second, I am, so I might not be able to predict dentistry as much, but from the second I said you're going to be really friendly with
we have like doppelganger practices.
Yes, they're very similar, and doppelganger personalities. You like food, you like comedy. What's something that you've learned from Dr. Jeff Goodman, my brother?
Well, Jeff is a systems guy, right? And so, you know, just being organized in my approach, in my practice, being thoughtful in sort of the systems that we try and implement, you know, is something that Jeff really prides himself on. And so, you know, he makes me think about efficiency, right? How do I make it efficient? How do I make it the safest environment? You know, those are positive influences.
He's part robot. He's part of the problem. He's part robot. But no, but he really, and that's what he does at our practice. I like to share. I wouldn't be able to do all the things I do without him and having someone like that at your practice. And then part of this is this text group we started during the beginning of the pandemic that we still use. And we share jokes and we share ideas. And sometimes we have uncomfortable conversations there, right?
Oftentimes. Frustration
and maybe
sadness.
I think the person, frustration, sadness, poignancy. Maybe the last person asked about this because he represents a lot of the nacho spirit, a lot of the nacho growth, a lot of the young Todd paying attention is Dr. Miles Santo. What do you admire about him and his journey as a younger dentist?
You know, what's amazing about Miles is that, like, he's the kind of guy that, and it's not dissimilar for me, that if he thinks he's surrounded by people who know some stuff and who are smart and organized, he listens and then he implements. And so he's a great example that over the past 3 years since we started the pandemic text chain, which was like,
that was March 2020.
Well, not only that, but it was therapy was what I'm trying to get at. Therapy for us. You know, Miles has seen incredible growth in his practice because he's surrounded by older-ish clinicians like us who've put the time in already, built their own practices, and given him some guidance on how to continue to grow, in combination with him having the drive to make himself better from a clinical standpoint, from a personality standpoint, from a patient relationship standpoint. You know, he's just always open-eared. And that's the thing, is that at the end of the day, he listens to everything, but he makes choices based on his office philosophy.
Being humble doesn't mean being a pushover or a doormat. It means saying, these people might have something to teach me. It's up to me to decide what I want to do, right? It's up to me to decide what I do, but I'm going to ask good questions. I'm going to be willing to challenge at times, but when it's all done with the foundation of care and caring about people, whether it's a fee-for-service practice, whether it's your dental relationships or friends, that's really the best ROI of life for everyone. So I, think that sharing more about what we do behind the scenes is important, because it can be very lonely to be a dentist, and it takes, what is the quote from your soccer thing that you like so much?
You never walk alone.
What does that mean to you?
You never walk alone. I mean, well, it's a Liverpool mantra, right? But I mean, ultimately, you carry each other through time, right? You just, you have to have people to share these experiences with. You can't be on an island. You can't be successful on an island as a dentist. I don't know any dentists who practice by themselves, literally by themselves, and are successful. You need to surround yourself with people with what we do. It's the nature of what it is. I worry about dentists because not all of us have that natural ability to lead a team, and it's very challenging. The good news is with dentistry, there's lots of ways to do it.
Yeah.
What I've learned, I used to shadow and go and be so jealous of people's offices, the way they practice. And what I've learned over the past 18 years of private practice is the way they do it, or the way you do it, or the way I do it, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
What I've learned is the way that makes sense for me to do it.
Right.
Right?
It's your happiness factor.
But I do think there are some consistencies amongst many of these practices that, even though it still has my own personality and flair to it, my own team, there are things that fee-for-service practices do together as a baseline that I think allows them to work that way. And I think that when you pose the questions on Nachos on Facebook and people are answering that question, you see the same things, right? Anyone who's running fee-for-service will tell you service, patient forward.
And they don't lead with that's crown prep, even though that's important.
Right.
It's really
none of it is leading with the clinical skill.
Well, if you'd like to follow Todd, at Center City Philly Dentist. If you'd like a free resource from us on how to be more fee-for-service, text fee-for-service at 215-798-9897. When you walk on the street with a Nacho shirt, and Todd's been a huge swag Nacho fan, people say, what the heck is dental nachos? What are you doing with dental nachos? And I say, it's ABC to FLA. Always be connecting to feel less alone. I just think that's such an important part of what we all do. And dentistry,
Relationship-based CE, man.
Relationship-based CE by Lewis Channel. Thanks so much, Todd. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, always my pleasure.